In the meantime, Tristan in Colorado. Tristan in Colorado, you are on the line with Jimmy and Luxander. I'm curious, when you say you're a fiscal conservative, what else are you? Because fiscally, that you just mean that you would like to spend, you'd like the federal government to spend less money, right?
Yeah, I can explain my point or where those views originated.
We
But
might
yes,
get,
that would be
it's probably
the
not,
entirety
it's
of it.
probably not necessary. It's more of just out
Probably
of
not
curiosity.
necessary.
Yeah, Tristan, how old are you? Just out of curiosity. You don't have to answer, but I like getting
30.
some of these in. 30?
Correct.
Socially, what are you? If you want to specify that you're fiscally conservative, socially, what are you?
I'm back and forth on a lot of issues. I would like to consider myself an independent for the most part. I have some views that might lean more towards the right and probably some views that might lean more towards the left.
So it sounds like we're not probably talking to an enthusiastic member of MAGA, but still someone who probably often votes Republican.
Member of MAGA, but I do have certain strong views that specifically what I called in for. I can give you a debate on that.
Go for it.
Transgender ideology in schools with children under the age of 18. What is your position on that?
The only thing I would define as transgender ideology and not laugh at the idea of using that term would be trans people wishing to be able to peacefully exist in society. And that's pretty much it. And so I would say I am super for that which you could actually call trans ideology. Luxander, trans person, would you like to respond?
I mean, yeah, that I guess is kind of the same sticking point that I have is like, what do you mean by transgender ideology? Like, I don't necessarily feel like I was in any kind of ideological frame of mind when I realized that I was trans. So I'm curious what you have to say on that.
Sure. What I mean specifically about transgender ideology, I don't necessarily. Okay, what's the best way to put this? I don't necessarily believe that in any way it's wrong to be transgender. It's actually a very brave thing, and most transgender people have been through more than any straight person, and a lot of people of the LGBTQ community can't even understand. So I appreciate that very much. What I am asking, I guess, more so to clarify the question, would be, at what point does pursuing gender, I don't want to say gender studies, but gender ideology. Okay, let me pause for a second.
Is there some specific position or belief that you take issue with, rather, because you're having trouble finding like the word to sum up?
It's not the transition that I have an issue with at all. It's when children are involved with their bodies changing and being affirmed that they are what they believe they are.
So you believe that people spontaneously become trans when they turn 18?
No, that's not the case. No.
What does it look like when you say they're being affirmed? So let's go with an example, because it's you were saying when their body's changing. So let's just go with a 12-year-old boy has had suspicions that they relate more to the experience of women. They're feeling wrong about certain things, and they're experiencing a level of distress that we'd call gender dysphoria. They express that to an adult as they're starting to see their body change. They're basically expressing, maybe not in those terms, depending on if they have the education. What does the adult do in that situation that you believe is happening now that they shouldn't be doing? And it's happening in school specifically.
Well, what has come out, I can't cite a specific example, so you can take this for what it is. But what we've seen in the media is that there are teachers and psychologists and psychiatrists within schools that are...
That's all true so far.
Affirming cares, okay, fair enough, right? That are affirming care for individuals at that young age where their bodies are changing, and
what kind of care?
Putting an ideology within their head that they are what they believe they are, and that's okay to feel that way. When, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that should not be happening until, especially with gender-affirming care, should not be happening until they have at least their frontal lobe developed 85%, 75%.
That never stops.
So 18.
There's a study that says that prefrontal cortex development stops at age 25. That's because the study stopped at age 25. But this is such a bullshit argument that like, and you probably are not like deliberately making it, Tristan. Maybe this is just something that you heard, but like, there is no like developmentally appropriate age at which suddenly you can make these decisions about yourself. I'm sure you've met people who are 18 years old who are huge dumbasses, and you're like, oh my God, you can sign a mortgage. And you've met people who are much younger, and you're like, these people are like, you know, a 16-year-old who's like getting emancipated and now already has their shit together. And like even people in our 30s who don't have their shit together, right? So like there is no developmentally appropriate like age for this. And it's really arbitrary where we decide to put the line, where like you agree that people don't spontaneously become trans at age 18, but you also are basically saying, I do not believe someone about them being trans if they are younger than 18, or rather, I decline to allow them to pursue that if they're under age 18. And you also have not clarified for Jimmy, he's asked you a couple times, like, what does that affirming care look like? At what ages are you protesting?
Yeah, anything under 18 for hormonal care and surgery specifically.
Okay, so anything under 18, no matter what the care is, hormonal. And would you do that across the board? No child should be able to get puberty blockers across under 18?
Same thing that I would say no child should be able to take steroids.
Okay, so you do understand cisgender kids take both steroids and puberty blockers for certain conditions, right? Like precocious puberty, you would give No, not at all. Precocious puberty means you're starting to have puberty at 5-6 years old. That's too early. There are some risks with it, but a lot of mental health risks with it. And so we give them puberty blockers and let them wait until they're a little bit older to have the puberty at what is a more appropriate time usually. HGH is literally given to children who have a basically like a growth hormone deficiency. So as they're going through puberty, they're specifically not growing. They're not a little person. They don't have, I don't know if we still call it dwarfism. I have not kept up on the right terms for their community. But it's not a little person. It's a person who just isn't getting their hormones. And so we do give them steroids. I had to have steroids of multiple types growing up because of health issues. So when you say just blanket, I would give no child steroids or no child hormones.
Okay, when we're referring to steroids, obviously I'm not referring to like health care. I'm referring to
Tristan, you are though. Tristan, the thing
like
is
HGH, and also you're referring to 0.2% of the population in girls and 0.05% of the population in boys. And we're talking
and so it's weird that some of you are claiming to vote on it. I agree that part's weird, but Tristan, and despite the fact that, as you say, the media is explaining to us that basically kids are going to school. Donald Trump said it. They send a kid off, Jimmy, I love you so much. And then a few days later, he comes back having had a surgery and now he's had his parts all changed. Yeah, none of those things are happening. And we don't see the massive number of trans kids that people are pretending. But you're saying when we're talking about medical, the whole reason we're treating medical issues is because we're trying to treat medical outcomes, as in reducing things that lead to the overall lesser well-being of the individual. And when it comes to trans care, we know that giving children access to certain things we do prohibit, like the physical surgeries, most of them that you are describing. You can't get gender reassignment surgery before you are 18, but things like puberty blockers, which is a delay and gives someone a level of time to think about things. And the fact that the regret rates on those things are much lower than the things you're describing, like medical necessary knee replacements and the like. It's basically just that you're sitting here and you're speaking definitively and you're going like, no, it's good to give those things to other kids. That way they have a better well-being, their mental health is better, and they don't die. But when it comes to trans kids, sure, their mental health care is better and they're less likely to commit suicide. But is death really a medical outcome when it comes to trans kids? But you can respond to that. Then I did have a different question.
Well, so what would you like me to respond to? Because you just said a lot there.
No, go ahead.
To the entirety of that statement.
It's all basically the same point. But yeah, any part you would like, go ahead and whatever your heart tells you should respond to.
Well, right. So, okay. When we're referring to the transgender community, it makes up less than 3% of the population of children or youth, specifically. And I believe that when children are exposed to different ideals, it becomes very difficult for them to discern what's reality and what's not. I am not bashing on trans people in any way whatsoever. I think they're the strongest people that most people, anybody who's had a real conversation with a trans person who's open and honest.
You know who's the strongest is
the
trans kids who have to grow up in a society where people who have no idea what even goes into trans healthcare for youth assert strong opinions about it. My dude, like, I'm trying to be patient with this and I'm trying to, kind of carry the conversation through, but it's like really annoying that you have literally I've asked you and Jimmy's asked you, like, what does this entail? And you're basically just like, any hormones. Like, you do not know what age we start puberty blockers. You do not know the health impacts of puberty blockers, that the fact that, like, if you take them after Turner stage 2 of puberty, it literally doesn't fucking do anything. You do not understand the care needs that are elevated for trans youth who cannot access this care. Like, you realize that basically what you're saying is, I want all trans kids to have worse grades, to suffer and struggle making friends, to struggle with daily activities of living like showering. Because why?
Why do I want all trans kids to struggle with showering? Is the question?
I mean, the activities of daily living is how we refer to, like, people's ability to be functional in their daily lives. And this is how we measure distress. So when we're talking about a medical problem, which is what gender dysphoria is in our current framework,
correct,
a medical problem where we have medical outcomes, you say you are okay with the supplementing of HGH steroids for certain medical reasons, but you are opposed to trans healthcare. And what I'm trying to bring you to the knowledge of is that trans healthcare is a medical issue. And if you are struggling, like, if your mental health is so poor that your grades are suffering and you struggle socially and you're just, like, not hitting certain developmental markers the way that we want teenagers to hit those developmental markers, that represents a problem. And that's why we intervene medically.
I have another question for you, Tristan.
Sure.
I'm a teacher. A child comes to me and describes gender dysphoria to me, but hasn't said the phrase yet. I know what gender dysphoria is. You said they should not be affirmed in that moment. So what should I say instead?
I wouldn't say they shouldn't be affirmed in a mental health stance. I am referring to the medical intervention specifically. And like you pointed out just before you started, sir, is that, I don't know if you prove your pronoun, so there you go. My apologies there. What I will say is this, is that when medical intervention comes into play, yes, obviously mental health is important. It is the most important. It's a big problem in our society, and that's period, point blank. But the problem becomes when children who don't know themselves you asked me a question. What would you say to a kid who came to you that is describing gender dysphoria without utilizing that verbiage? I don't have the answers for you, other than these people need psychology and they need therapy. They don't need medical intervention.
That's called conversion therapy. If you're saying that trans people, in order to treat their gender dysphoria,
that they need to be.
Hold on. Sorry, I know I interrupted you. I just feel a need to get in here.
No worries.
When people say that trans people need mental health care instead of physical access to transition, that's what you're saying is you want to deconvert them from thinking that they're trans. And, like, I don't know that that's what you truly believe in your heart, Tristan, but what you're saying is, hold on. What the natural implications of what you're saying is that, okay, well, I think this kid thinks that they might be trans, but I think that they're not. And so I want them to go to therapy instead of getting health care. Like, that is because, like, ultimately the secret hope that people have is that they will desist from identifying as trans, where we know, and we've tried to treat it that way. We've given people therapy. We've given people antipsychotic medication. We've given people antidepressants. Like, we have thrown everything at the wall, trying to do literally anything except give people trans healthcare. And it turns out that that is the answer to the problem, though. Like, we don't need elevated amounts of mental health care if we are just given access to our bodies. Like, that cis teenagers who are not trans can just grow up developmentally and worry about normal things like who they're going to take to prom and the test that they're taking on Friday. where like trans kids simply do not have access to the fullness of their lives because arbitrarily cisgender people who do not know what it's like to grow up as trans have decided to basically patronizingly say like, well, I don't feel comfortable with you doing this, even though it's your body. So I'm going to tell you that you can't do it.
Yeah. So Tristan, I guess I'll just ask you another question and we'll just follow through. Once again, what you're saying is how you would do it. Person comes to me, I'm the adult, they express gender dysphoria. I know the word gender dysphoria, but I don't, in this case, affirm them. You said that's not necessarily wrong, but it's not right either. They need to get into therapy or see a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever. So I do that. I connect them to a therapist. The therapist agrees they are experiencing gender dysphoria. Now, what should the therapist do different? Because right now, the prescription for gender dysphoria in many cases is transition. And so when it comes to this child, if they've spent time with a therapist and they can see that this is genuinely following all the markers that you would expect out of a person who needs to transition, they will know that that child's outcomes are likely going to be much better if, one, we give them puberty blockers so that they can make decisions when they are older about transitioning and not have the effects of having gone through, we'll call it the wrong puberty, for lack of a better phrase at the moment, and then or go on puberty blockers. So, hey, we actually need a little time to figure this out. We need to talk it out more because there's other things we need to address and make sure that those identity issues aren't at play. But the good news is if we put you on the puberty blockers and we take 3 months, 6 months, whatever to talk about those things, we can just stop them there and it'll basically be like you never took puberty blockers with very low risk. Or what would be the option you're saying is better than those two options, Tristan, that is consistent with what we now know from the psychological world that's gone through rigorous testing, that has these recommendations for a reason? What is the superior thing to letting a child be on puberty blockers, which realistically is the only thing we're talking about here?
Well, a child being on puberty blockers causes significant issues from their physical health, and we all know that. There's not an argument there.
No, excuse me.
Physical health?
We don't all know that. As Luxa already pointed out, if you take puberty blockers,
their body significantly.
Sure, that's the point. By the way, Lux, you're muted. My body was changed significantly by the surgeries I did that had nothing to do with gender transition, right? So yes, medical care changes your body. This is like when people are like, they want to also use the term like, you do a mutilation when you get a sex change. Yes, so you do a mutilation when you get a liver transplant. Mutilation doesn't matter. So you're just using generalized term. When you're saying major changes, if anything, it's preventing the major changes of puberty that can make outcomes that a person who is trans would desire in their transition more difficult to achieve. And it's kind of a situation where I feel like a lot of people like you are saying, I want to raise the odds that when these people become adults, I already know they're statistically still likely to be trans. I want to raise the odds that I can clock every trans person because I'm afraid of being attracted to one. That's how I read it. I'm going to be honest, Tristan. That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, I can understand that statement. What I will say is that's a very difficult thing to sit here and put onto any single individual. Let's be honest. I mean, that's kind of a straw man argument in a sense.
I don't think it is. I think it's a broad argument that fits an Occam's razor position.
The reason
that I'm happy to begin at
the transition is because they're afraid they're going to be attracted to them.
If people like you who sound like you've done a baseline amount of Googling that know enough that most of these kids who end up on puberty blockers, overwhelming, will still be trans as an adult, they don't change their mind, detransition is an extremely small percentage of people. And even within that, we always talk about the detransitioners, but not then the retransitioners or the people who detransition but still think transition care should be accessible to everybody. Statistically, you are more likely to still be trans. And so your outcomes are going to be better as an adult if you don't go on the puberty blockers. So if you know that these numbers exist and you know, as you said, they're not bad for being trans, you know that this is going to be better for all of them, that outcomes are overwhelmingly going to improve, but you think that there's maybe a couple of cis kids that might get harmed by it. So we should harm all trans kids for the couple of cis kids instead of risking a couple of cis kids versus all trans kids. That's the calculus you do. Yeah, it does make simplest sense to me that people who are not trans and are against trans care feel emasculated by the possibility that other people may be able to live their true selves and have an inherent fear that one day they're going to be attracted to a woman with a penis.
I mean, I can. The way you articulated your argument, it's hard to argue with. Here's what I'll say about that. What I will say about that is that utilizing an argument that they're afraid to be attracted to a woman with a penis is a very difficult way to justify your argument there. It's not appropriate, and it's really not. What I will
I think I just gave my justification.
Sorry?
I think I just gave my justification.
Say that one more time.
I think I just gave my justification. As is with Occam's razor is where you begin. It's not where you end. And Occam's razor, it is that does fit an Occam's razor test. So it would require some debunking against what is right now supportive evidence for that, which, I mean, you can literally see the supportive evidence across the spectrum of cis men freaking out when they find out Hunter, what's Hunter's last name? Is
Schaefer.
Hunter Schaefer is trans, and they're so angry that they were accidentally ogling a trans boob. It happens. She's hot. There's plenty of supporting evidence that it is, especially these people who have if we want to talk about ideologies, they pretend they have an ideology that can always spot trans people. And yet you have people right now, some of whom are in the chat, who are questioning whether or not I'm trans. Tristan, if you had to guess, what do you think? Trans or no trans?
Have a look. You were trans or not?
Do you already know the answer to this question?
No, I don't. No.
Just have a look at me. I'm curious.
Do you want me to guess?
Yeah.
From
look at those cheekbones.
What's the best way to put it? I don't want to assume, but at the same time,
sure.
By the way you asked that question, I'm going to say yes.
Now, let's take it away from by the way I asked the question. Can you see the show?
Yeah.
Anywhere? Just look at me and tell me, if I didn't know you and I was just physically looking at you on the screen right now, would you guess trans or no trans?
No. I would guess no.
Interesting. I get a lot of people who think I look trans. It's interesting.
You got the riz.
Usually, people who meet me in person rarely do. I am 6'2", and so usually a masculine presenting 6'2" person doesn't get clocked as trans very often. But
now, can I ask you the question? Are you trans?
No, I'm not. It depresses me to say I'm not trans.
He's so much cooler.
Now, why does that depress you? What about not being trans is a depressing aspect for you?
Hey, Tristan. It was a joke. Comedy's legal now. It was just a joke. It was just a silly Billy Goose. Not only am I not trans, I would describe myself as stereotypically cisgender, except for the fact that I'll have sex with men. It's not really, that doesn't affect gender, but clearly it affects other people's sense of gender. I am bisexual or pansexual, whichever you prefer. But it affects other people's sense of it. But that's how masculine I am. A gross, muscly man won't throw me. Actually, I'm not into muscle dudes. But I like to woodwork and ride horses and smell. I like to cut grass. It's
traditionally masculine activities at that point.
What's that?
I said traditionally masculine activities is what.
Correct. And so now and I'm glad because I've had a thing on my list of questions I have for you. A cisgender person, a cisgender kid comes to a child, an adult, and describes that a boy, born male, born with a penis, to make it as clear as possible to anybody who could get pedantic with it, goes to an adult and is describing hey, I'm going through puberty and I'm getting really interested in things like lifting weights. I'm getting really interested in things like woodworking. I'm getting really interested in horseback riding. I would like advice on how to pursue this identity that I don't have a word for. Do we affirm their existence? That pursuing their masculine identity, pursuing their gender identity is okay?
I would argue the question as woodworking be their genuine or gender identity.
woodworking isn't their gender identity. Pursuing the multiple things that are associated with masculine roles would be pursuing their gender identity. Absolutely.
Sure. So let me reframe the question then and ask you,
Mm-hmm.
if some cisgender male were to come and say, I like wearing dresses and want to grow my hair out and dye my hair and wear nail polish and wear dresses, would that be something we should affirm? I would answer yes. But does that mean that
for sure
they're a woman?
Could.
Does that automatically mean
not.
because they have these interests that they are someone other than their biological makeup?
Tristan, I don't know if you think this is a trick question, but my friends are drag queens. I would literally say, like, then go wear a dress, slay. And if while you're wearing a dress, you want us to call you girl, we'll do that. But then if you want to go to your job at the weightlifting factory and whatever is the most masculine job these days. I do need to make a correction. Luxander in the chat said, associate horses with women, actually riders of Rohan. I meant good horseback riders. Okay.
I see. Okay.
That was a joke too, Tristan. It's cool. I can say that. Some of my best friends are sexist. I would affirm it, and I would affirm like figuring out what that is, because it's not just that they come and say they want to wear dresses and stuff. Again, gender dysphoria isn't I want to wear dresses. Gender dysphoria is the distress. It's not the like dresses are fun. For the record, I don't want to wear dresses.
No,
I would for charity, probably.
I agree with you, but it's the way that you asked your question that seemed a little disingenuous in that sense. Do you understand why I asked you that question and why I phrased it that way?
But I phrased it my way because from the onset, you said that they shouldn't have these things affirmed to them in school, and now you are saying they should. You've swapped your position. No, I'm not saying they should have. Again, it has nothing to do with their intention or their activities that they participate in. It has to do specifically with the medical intervention. And I know that, I forget your name. Luxander is the other person. I'm Jimmy, and Luxander is above me.
Hi.
Very good. So you mentioned earlier that I lost my train of thought. You mentioned earlier that you know what? I lost my train of thought, so I'm not going to continue that right now because I'm going to say something that probably wasn't true. So I apologize for that.
Let's see if we agree then. It's not that you aren't wanting them to affirm it. It's not that you don't want the best care for their well-being. It's that you don't want somebody on either side, and I would agree with this, on either side of that issue, to articulate it poorly. So I wouldn't want a MAGA person to lie about trans identities to that kid, tell them it's a phase, tell them this is stuff they have to get over, tell them the depression will pass and it's just getting through it. The way my dad said, not about my gender identity, but about my depression and what he didn't realize at the time was my autism, turns out wasn't a phase, and fucked me up because we didn't get autism affirming care. But anyway, I wouldn't want a MAGA person to say that. And I also don't want a teacher who, by the way, I don't think these teachers largely exist, except for you can usually find some example of an extreme, but someone comes to a teacher and says like, you know, I kind of like painting my nails. And then they just get it in their head that this kid must be a trans girl. And they're going to go out of their way to convince them that they are a trans girl. I don't want either of those things to happen. But I think you will look across the board, the existence of the MAGA people telling people harmful things about their identities are not hard examples to find. And even if you can find an example of the teacher that I just described, she probably just needs corrective education. So if anything, this thing you're calling gender ideology, we need more of it in school because we need more teachers to have been trained well on gender identities, what information to share, when to share it. And when it comes to like just that trans people exist and that's okay, that should be in general sex ed. And then as far as giving advice that might start a child on their track of transitioning, they should know how to have that conversation initially that puts that child with a professional who is qualified to handle it. But by the way, fiscally conservative Tristan, this will also depend on other big changes like universal access to healthcare and mental health care.
That is a whole nother issue. I want to touch on your point. I want to touch.
It's actually real quick, and then you will, Tristan. When you say that's a whole other issue, 90% of the issues that MAGA have with the opposition and how terrible they think everyone is actually does come down to access to universal health care. And then a couple other things like housing and the like. Like we had somebody call the other day about the crime rates in South Korea where they have gun laws and universal health care, but he thought it was because, what was it? Why did he think it was? I know Charlie Kirk did a video too. If someone can remind me in the live chat what he thought was different, that we were doing wrong and why our crime was so high when in South Korea, where they have all these entitlement programs that we don't have, it's low, but it was the Democrats' fault. Anyway, I'm not a Democrat, but it's the Dems' fault. Go ahead, Tristan, I might have derailed you again, and I apologize if I did.
No, you're fine. I guess where we disagree on the more gender ideology within schools, I agree with the fact that we need more training for teachers to be able to address, and psychologists as well, within the schools, and social workers and that nature. We obviously need to have more training for these people so that they can actually address it correctly. I disagree that we need more of it in schools. We need more of it in training for the individuals within the schools. So it's not, and I also believe, and this is where we're probably going to disagree. Excuse me. I don't believe that a single teacher has any right to talk to a child about any form of sex or gender or any form of any, and you can argue sex ed teachers and things of that nature, sure. But when did we all take sex ed? 8th grade, 9th grade, 7th grade, whatever it may be?
I had sex ed starting in like 2nd grade.
It's becoming confusing.
Because we do developmentally appropriate sex ed.
I started in 2nd or 3rd too. Yeah. I can remember the cartoon. They were anatomy cartoons mostly.
Yeah. You start out with just basic things like girls have periods, whatever, and then you move on to more complicated stuff as you get older. And yeah, by the time you're 14 and 15, you're talking about condoms. Sure. Okay, so first of all, I've noticed that there's two different things that you've claimed that you have an issue with. You claim on one hand that the thing that you really take issue with is medical intervention, but now you're also saying that you are against the idea of teachers, like when you say like they should never talk about it, that means that you think that we should not affirm trans kids. And what you're doing in that situation is, again, hold on. No, that is what you're saying. You're saying that we shouldn't affirm them. If you're saying we shouldn't talk about gender with them.
Stuff too, by the way.
Yeah. You talked about sexuality, which we're trying to stick on the gender thing. But like,
sure.
Again, what you're doing, Tristan, is you are saying I am pro children's suffering, and you don't think of yourself that way. But what you are doing is you're saying we shouldn't give trans kids access to healthcare that demonstrably improves their lives with a fucking 1% regret rate. If the regret rate, hold on, let me ask you, if the regret rate for gender affirming care for minors was 0%, would you say that it's okay to give them the medicine that they say they need?
It's a tough question because it is. But I'll answer that question with a one-word answer, and that is tough. You're making it very difficult to have an argument here. The answer is yes.
It shouldn't be a difficult question because if the regret rate, let's look at it a different way. I'll frame it differently. I'll frame it differently for you, Tristan. I'll frame it in a way that maybe makes more sense. If the success rate for gender affirming care for minors was 100%, if every single medical outcome was a positive medical outcome, would you say that it's appropriate to give that care?
I would have to agree. I would have to agree that would be something that makes sense.
So if the success rate is 99%, do you think that we should give that health care?
96 to 97% is what it is.
Okay, well, the actual success rate is 99%. For gender affirming care for minors.
Transgender care, here's the problem that I have here. Okay, is that it ties back into a bigger argument of then the suicide rate within the transgender community and why those issues still are getting
mental health outcomes for trans people who have access to gender affirming care.
That have had a suicide rate the way that transgender community
the suicide rate and self-harm rate for trans people becomes the same as the general population when they have healthcare and affirming people in their lives. We have the same mental health outcomes as soon as we address the trans problem. Like, yes, if we're treated worse, if we don't have family support, if we don't have access to healthcare, then the mental health issues are exacerbated. But when we receive trans healthcare, we become normal baseline mental health as everybody else.
Yeah, Tristan, it's easy to actually put this way, and you'll get it quickly. We'll switch to gay real quick. Why was it for so long, it may still be the case, I'd have to look, why was it for so long that in Utah, gay kids were killing themselves so much more than other places in the country? Not trans, but gay. Why was the suicide rate among specifically gay kids so high?
In Utah specifically.
Mm-hmm. Did you not know that?
Yeah, you asking specifically.
Yeah. Utah had like an abnormally high number of gay kids killing themselves.
And I just don't have the data.
I think you could guess. It has nothing to do with the fact that this was even after Obergefell. This is after there is like more broad acceptance, though obviously queer people haven't been universally accepted, but theirs stayed really high because the state and the Mormons are still very anti-gay. So what you're describing is, as Lux just said, if you actually give people an accepting and affirming community and the care they want, they actually get to the same suicide rate as everybody else. But in America, do you know how hard that is to achieve? Go to Twitter, create a new Twitter account, brand new, use a VPN, use everything to make sure it can't track any of your cookies or guess who you are. And tell me how far you have to scroll from your new Twitter account to get to a transphobic tweet. It's going to be in the top.
I haven't created a new Twitter account in a while, so I couldn't answer that question for you.
No, I'm telling you the exercise to go do. How hard is it to actually escape? As you already described, here is a thing that so few people it applies to. And yet, Republicans will hold policies hostage over whether or not trans kids get to do sports. They will constantly bastardize trans people. This tiny group of people who aren't hurting other people are getting absolutely reamed by a political party. And you want to sit there and go, but they have access to this care when they actually don't. When a lot of places, they don't even have access to therapy. They don't have access to drugs, but they have access to this care. Why is their suicide rate still up in a country that fucking hates them?
If we're talking about Utah specifically, then I would obviously argue the more.
No, the whole country now. Utah was just about gay kids to illustrate the point that when it came to gay kids, it was because the community was so hostile that even amongst Mormons who are nice, smiley bigots, the hatred still came across, and children were too afraid to come out, and they would rather die than come out of the closet, or were teased too bad when they did come out of the closet and would rather die or go back to school. That was the example of why it's obviously community, not access, not broad acceptance, because laws have passed that protect somebody, because this was still happening even after gay marriage was legalized. It's about how the actual community treats you. America, broadly, at large, hates trans people. That's why their suicide rate is high here, but not in other countries that they just kind of exist in. They're just part of the population. And everybody goes about their day. Sorry, what?
What other countries are you referring to?
You can go with, sure, go with Thailand. How's the suicide rate in Thailand for trans people who are more accepted there?
It's a great question.
I assume you brought it up because you had an answer.
Well, I mean, you're referring to other countries, and we're talking about America, but I don't have the Thailand suicide rate off the top of my head.
Sure. Right? Where they're more accepted and they have community, it is less. In America, also, America may have. Is there a country that has a higher suicide rate amongst trans people than America?
I haven't looked into it.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Sorry, ask that question one more time. Sorry.
I was asking Lux, but I'm going to look. I'm going to find it out for you. I would not be surprised. It would almost surprise me if there was a country. It'd probably have to be a small, bigoted country to where you have overrepresentation per individual.
I think the countries where that number would be the highest are going to be numbers where trans people's data is not collected, like Saudi Arabia or something like that.
That's sure. Yeah, sure. Though, weirdly, it's kind of one of those things where they'll never have had the language to even understand that that's what they were. So even if we did try to collect like we used to in the old days, they just get swept up as gay suicides.
Sure. Or if their families bury their information. There was a trans woman who was trafficked back to, I think, Saudi Arabia, and she committed suicide and her parents buried her as a man. That shit happens.
Yeah.
Sure. And I'm sure individual cases happen everywhere, right? I mean, that's, individualistic.
Yeah. But when we look at population data, what we see consistently is that when trans people, particularly trans youth, if there is only one affirming trans adult for a trans child, their suicide and self-harm risk drops by like 80, 90%. Like it plummets just with one affirming person in their lives. So, I mean, like honestly, Tristan, like I would say like look into the data on this. I don't know if that's going to help you get to a greater point of clarity.
No,
like here's some hot
Of
tips
course I will.
that you should know is like puberty blockers are only taken for 2 years. When you take them for only 2 years, they do not have any permanent effects on the body. They just pause puberty for a short time. That gives more time for a multidisciplinary medical team where the child is leading and saying, this is what I want. The parents are saying, we understand and are on board. We affirm that our child knows what's going on. Usually an endocrinologist, some kind of mental health professional, a primary care physician, all of these people across multiple disciplines working together for children who are persistent, insistent, and consistent with their identities. And we make them wait to get care. We say, oh, let's make double, triple extra sure, which is why only like 1% of youth who end up on puberty blockers desist from being translators. So like we make so many kids wait. The only ones who even get the care in the first place are the ones who like we're so certain beyond any possible doubt. And then, yeah, we have like an almost 100% success rate because the standard is so high. So I just want you to know that it does not make sense to say, let's raise the standard when it's already almost 100% effective at selecting the actual trans youth to receive this care.
Well, you know, at some point, I don't have the data in front of me, so I can't argue that. And truthfully, at the end of the day, I want kids to be happy. I want kids to be comfortable within themselves, and if that's what makes it, if that data is correct, then obviously there's no reason to not have that care. What I will say is that I have a specific individualistic example in my life where these things have happened to one of my friend's children. And it's not the only reason that I hold these beliefs, but it's definitely a contributing factor. It was confusing to children when they don't even know about themselves to then be told that they should be going in this route. And it, unfortunately,
nobody's doing that.
Harms.
Did you see somebody do that who said you should be trans?
Okay, maybe I used the incorrect verbiage.
I mean, it's an important distinction. If you want to say it's a possibility to a child, I don't think that's confusing. If you just say this is a possibility, which is why I disagree with you about the whole gender ideology in schools point, because all we're saying is this is a type of way to be a person. Anybody could be this type of person because it's just a normal type of person. And so when kids express this, we say, yeah, we are open to the idea of you exploring this. And that's it. Like no one's trying to funnel anybody into this. Many parents also share the feeling that you have, Tristan, where it's like, I would rather my kid not be trans because life is going to be harder for them. And it's a challenge. And maybe I don't agree with it in my beliefs. Like I've seen so many families have to go through difficult transitions as a family because the parents are conservative. So like there is no amount of telling kids you have to be this that will cause them to be that. If there were, there would be no such thing as trans or gay because our society does tell kids you should be cis. We say like, you are your body. You need to accept your body how you were born. Maybe not you, but I'm just speaking generally. And every movie has like a straight kiss, even the kids' movies. We don't do gay kisses in kids' movies. So yeah, there would be no gay or trans people if it was something that you could tell someone to be. Kids don't seem to find it very confusing any more than they find it confusing that their friend has two mommies instead of a mommy and a daddy. Like it just is concern trolling. Children are not stupid. They understand gender. They understand seeing themselves reflected in different groups of people.
I can agree with that statement 100%.
Cool. I feel like you've come around a little bit on this, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, listen, I'm a realist. I'm no MAGA guy. I'm not sitting here hardlined on one side. I have concerns.
Yeah.
And like I said, because of that individual aspect, the individual example that I gave you with my buddy's child, yes, of course, that sparked some level of, maybe bias, you can say, right? But here's what I will say, is that I believe every kid should get the care that they need. I just have a very difficult time with changing their bodies at a young age. That's really my biggest
only for
argument.
this, though. We've already addressed it's
Changing
only for
children's
this.
bodies when they don't know themselves.
But again, it's only for this that you're opposed to changing their bodies, right? Like people have
not necessarily.
Kids have been getting gender-affirming care who are cisgender forever, and none of you said a word about the things they were doing to make sure that they were growing hair, to make sure they were growing taller, or girls were getting boob jobs at early teenage years, cis girls getting boob jobs, and people are not talking about that. Is it horrific, or is it just nothing? Is it just not a thing?
I have to say, too, that puberty is permanent. And so the reason why we support puberty pausing medication, that's what puberty blockers are, they pause it, is because the changes that you go through if you just let puberty happen are irreversible. Like, they are irreversible. You know, the difference, it's like, let's say somebody is 13 years old and they identify as a boy and they were able to start puberty blockers on time. That kid does not now have to spend $15,000 on breast removal surgery and take 6 weeks off of work to recover. Like, that's bad for the economy. However, whichever way you split it, it's bad for the economy. As a fiscal conservative, I think you could appreciate not wanting to further line the pockets of big pharma and allowing people to be as successful as they can be in contributing to our economy. So it's also, like many thousands of dollars of surgeries that you have to do to reverse that change. So, I mean, if your ideological position is we shouldn't allow people under 18 to have permanent changes to their bodies, then the natural consequence would actually be give everybody puberty blockers for as long as possible to give everybody the opportunity to avoid irreversible changes.
Real quick, before you proceed, Tristan, I just want to make sure that we do a little call because we don't have people in the chat are saying they're going to call and argue, but they aren't calling in to argue. So just a quick call out to the chat. If you are listening right now and you are MAGA and you would like to argue, I'd really love to hear a good defense of pro-life, because the other guy, I think any of you watching today, if you had watched Tyler the other day, you would have agreed. We'd finally be able to come together on something because we'd both agree that Tyler was specifically bad at it. So if you want to call in and give an actual decent argument for the pro-life position, or you want to defend the shutdown and say the shutdown is actually the Democrats' fault and not the Republicans. If you want to call in and any real MAGA position, we would love to talk to you. That phone number is on the screen, 33654-321-01, and we will discuss your... I got to tell you, MAGA is unique in that even as a leftist, if I looked back to Bush era and stuff, I'm sure there are key policies from the Bush era that I could say I'm not actually opposed to that. That's just kind of like, go ahead and do that thing. Or I would have at least thought we should try and sounded good in the moment, but then we saw how poorly everything went. Like the motivations for No Child Left Behind sound very nice until they did it. So anyway, you can call in and defend any of your MAGA positions, because it's unlikely I agree with virtually any of them that are exclusively MAGA. Anyway, Tristan, sorry, if you were holding on to your response point there.
Well, here's what I'll say, just to round off the conversation. And I hope you get some more callers in here who can defend themselves and actually have a debate with you guys. I do appreciate it, by the way. There seems to be a culture nowadays where people can't discuss arguments, especially arguments that are sensitive to them. And I find it very disingenuous for people to have such hardline stances without actually having any knowledge behind it. So I do appreciate
agreed
your conversation.
Your confidence should be proportional to your evidence. Yeah.
Sure, I agree with you. And not only that, I agree with that statement 100%, but I also think that people get so emotional when it comes to these issues rather than analytical. And
I think you should be both, though. Tristan, it's okay to be emotional about. I grew up with a family who made me worse because they weren't educated on autism and they were dicks about anxiety and depression. And so I think I actually think it's fine for us to sit in our emotions and have empathy for the children who are getting also fucked. But I agree that there is no argument that you can make on a purely emotional basis.
Right. And I feel that that's where, and if you don't have another caller, we can get into it. That's where I think the left goes wrong.
We've got some lining up. I will tell you that you've already admitted that you did that a lot of the things that you are holding on to have to do with a friend that you believe the version of the story you've gotten is, first of all, accurate.
Sure.
And it's how you feel about that situation that is what's causing your skepticism.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. And, you know,
by the way, your friend is welcome to call.
I would like to ask one question, and then we're probably going to wrap up.
Sure.
Tristan.
Yeah.
No worries.
So I'm so glad that you agreed that like the well-being of children is important, and that, you know, if this healthcare is as successful as I claim, then it would be a good thing. Can you also agree that it's a good thing for children to have adults at school that make them feel safe, even when their home lives are not safe?
Make them feel safe? Absolutely. Now that word "make them feel safe" is very subjective, but yes, I agree. Well, 100%. That needs to be a safe place for every young person in this country. No questions asked.
Okay. Yeah. So like if a kid knows that their parents would be really angry and punish them if they came out as trans, and they talk to a teacher at school and they get support, and the teacher just says, "I'm here to make you feel safe at school," do you think that that's a good thing for children?
Of course it is. There's no, there's literally no argument to that, and anybody would say otherwise. It's just lying to themselves.
Well, there's entire policies, like in Florida, where the teacher now has to disclose to the parents, no matter how abusive the child says the parents are going to be if they hear this information, that
that's where the line gets drawn and becomes blurred.
I believe now. Oh, I don't think so. I think that I think it's very easy to say, like, when you're here, we just take care of you. They're not sending them off to surgeries. They're not getting them actual appointments for therapy, despite the fact they may need them. If anything, I'd say that where we're pretending the line is blurry is harmful, because we probably should be giving kids access to certain services. I'm opposed to things like Jehovah's Witnesses being able to deny a child a blood transfusion because of their beliefs. At that point, that's too abusive. Remove them from their care. And if the outcomes are that bad, and in a lot of cases it seems there are, I would have been better. And again, not trans, I would have been better off, even knowing how fucked up the foster care system is, removed from my family situation.
So do you believe that removing children from their situation is a better answer than leaving them with their parental figures? I mean, obviously, I'm not going to ask that question. That's a very overarching question, because obviously CPS is...
I'll answer it, even overarching.
Yeah, but it's a bad question, because everybody believes that if they have shitty parents that are abusive, I mean, take the fucking kids away. Excuse my language, sorry.
You're good.
Take the kids away. But
there's also way more to the solution necessary than just removing them, though. Again, we need to be leaning into our, dare I say, socialist side of things, and be giving everybody access to everyone. Good mental health care as a right. Good physical health care as a right. Access to education as a right.
I agree with you in a sense, but I also disagree in a major way. I'm not going to hold up your airways anymore. I appreciate the conversation. Let's have it again, and we can debate that socialist aspect of it.
We'll go to the fiscal stuff next time. Sounds great.
Yeah, sure.
All right, thanks, Tristan.
I appreciate the call, both of you. You guys have a great rest of your day. God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye.